The Sims 4 Adventure Awaits expansion pack is about to launch. And it doesn't just give us a brand new world, it brings some of the most in-depth lore the series has ever seen, along with the answer to one of The Sims' longest running mysteries. In this video, I'm breaking down every single piece of lore and every hidden detail inside Adventure Awaits. And trust me, you'll want to stick around until the very end, because that's where we finally uncover the fate of The Sims 2's most tragic character, Skip Broke. Before we dive in, I want to thank EA for granting me early access to a beta build of Adventure Awaits through the Creator Network. Just so you know, I wasn't paid for this video and EA had no involvement in its contents. I just need to disclose that I got access for free. But you know what's not free? Summer camp. And guess what, guys? I want to go to summer camp. I've never actually been to one before, and with this expansion, I think it's finally time. But here's the deal. If I'm going to make it happen, I need your help. Head over and subscribe to Mynameisgonz.com. You'll get early access to my weekly shorts, behind the scenes content, and of course, your name featured at the end of my videos. So help Lil Gonzi make his way to Camp Gibbi by signing up at Mynameisgonz.com. And if you enjoy the video and want to see more deep dives like this, please consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment below telling me your favorite moment. And don't forget, after you subscribe, click the bell icon so you never miss an upload. Alright, let me take off this ridiculous hat and let's dive into Adventure Awaits. Gibbi Point is a world that draws heavy inspiration from New Zealand, with its neighborhoods echoing landscapes from both the North and South Islands. According to legend, many years ago, a massive seismic event struck the peninsula. The disaster unleashed an enormous wave that reshaped the land, leaving behind a strange new ecosystem filled with flora and fauna never seen before. That event, known as the Great Wave, brought a new era of Sims eager to explore this transformed region. One of those early adventurers was actually an ancestor of the Kahananui family from Sulani, creating a direct connection between the Polynesian-inspired people of Sulani and those of Gibbi Point, which honestly feels pretty fitting. The idea of a destructive yet world-shaping wave isn't random either. It mirrors themes in Maori mythology where waves often appear as forces of both ruin and renewal. And before we go further, it's worth noting that this expansion doesn't do much to represent indigenous culture clearly. And as a Latino and US citizen, I don't feel like I'm the right person to lead that discussion. But I do want to acknowledge the omission, and throughout the video, I'll be highlighting connections to New Zealand's culture, and in fact proof that there are connections to Maori culture, but I do agree the inclusion of indigenous symbolism and townies would have gone a long way. Now, Gibbi Point is made up of 3 neighborhoods: Wanderwood Wilds, Crystal Valley, and Jellyfish Junction. Wanderwood Wild sits on what was once a caldera, a massive hollow created by volcanic eruptions and, in this case, fueled by active lava geysers. But after the Great Wave, the soil became rich and fertile, transforming the barren crater into dense forests and greenery. This beauty came at a cost, however, as the Hothead Rock Geyser kept spewing magma that set the new forests ablaze, which led to the creation of the Gibbi Point Ranger Service and the construction of the Firewatch Tower. The Firewatch Tower isn't all that useful these days now that the geothermal activity has calmed down, but it's still occupied by an old hermit ranger. And if you take the time to befriend them, you just might uncover a few secrets they've been keeping. Wanderwood Wilds is clearly modeled after New Zealand's North Island, especially the geothermal parks around Taupo, where bubbling geysers and steaming vents sit right alongside lush greenery. The Wanderwood Wilds is also home to the famous Camp Gibbi. Originally founded by the first wave of adventurers, the camp began as nothing more than a few canvas tents in some pretty rough conditions. Over time though, it grew into the premier kids getaway spot, where you can kayak, practice archery, and just enjoy yourself to your heart's content. Jellyfish Junction is a coastal village that serves as Gibbi Point's main tourist hub. The town is filled with vibrant sculptures and murals that celebrate the spirit of the community. Jellyfish Junction itself is modeled on New Zealand's South Island, with its soaring mountain ranges, rugged bays, and sweeping beaches inspired by places like Queenstown and Kailakura. At the heart of it all is the Revive and Thrive Retreat, a fitness buff's dream where you can train, kayak, and take in the crystal blue bay. If you look closely out on the water, you'll even spot the wreck of a downed airplane. Locals whisper that it belonged to a member of the Landgrab family. Adding to that mystery is a recovered relic called the Journals of the Gibbi Point Expeditioner, found right here on the shores of Jellyfish Junction. The journal tells of an explorer who stumbled upon Gibbi Point while following in the footsteps of his forebearers. Could this be the Landgrab who crashed the plane? And was his ancestor none other than Admiral Landgrab? It's something worth keeping in mind. Not far from the village lies Underlight Bay, a hidden cove that glows at night thanks to the cultivation of fluorescent algae in the water. Towering above the coastline is what locals call the Lonely Lighthouse. It stands on Fletcher's Point, named for an old Fletcher who once lived at the top of the tower. For years, he supplied Gibbi Point with its arrows and even oversaw much of the archery in the community. Then one day, the shipments simply stopped. When villagers went to check on him, they found nothing but a letter pinned to the door, thanking the town for taking him in and treating him as one of their own. And to this day, people still leave notes on the lighthouse door. Some see it as a way of venting, while others hope their words will find someone who understands them. And don't worry, we'll be circling back to that later. Crystal Valley was once a bustling gold mining community, led primarily by the Scoop family. And fun fact, mining in New Zealand actually began with the Maori, who quarried stone well before European colonization. There's even evidence suggesting that they were aware of gold deposits but didn't place much importance on it until the gold rush of 1852. After a particularly vicious eruption by the Hothead Rock Geyser, the mines collapsed, and in their place, crystal formations were exposed across the valley, giving the region its new name. The Scoop mining business was abandoned, and suddenly panning for crystals became the new craze. The eruptions also caused a nearby sea note, or a sinkhole, to collapse and form a beautiful natural pond which, by pure chance, the Great Wave then flooded with glowing jellyfish. Mixed with the natural glowworms in the area, the lagoon lights up at night in a dazzling otherworldly display that locals quickly named the Electric Lagoon. Some even claim that swimming in it can revitalize your body and soul. This of course draws directly from the Waitomo glowworm caves and the countless species of jellyfish found along New Zealand's coasts. Not everyone agrees on where these jellyfish really came from though. Their name, Astral Pro Jellyfish, has only fueled rumors that they might be extraterrestrial. The locals also seemed changed from eating the jellyfish as a regular part of their diet, but perhaps that's just a rumor. And as if Crystal Valley wasn't already strange enough, this is also where you'll stumble across a giant nest belonging to none other than a massive, bipedal, talking plumbird. One of the most unique and recognizable inhabitants of Gibbi Point has to be the plumbirds. These creatures actually predate the Great Wave, with fossil records and cave paintings tracing them back to the earliest days of the peninsula. And while today they're relatively small, those fossils suggest they were once much, much larger. Plumbirds originally gathered around the geysers of Wanderwood Wilds, where their diet consisted mainly of butterflies and moths. Historians say the wilds were once home to mystical creatures that hummed a tune only plumbirds could hear. When those beings vanished from the forest, they left behind a single spherical boulder said to be a gift for the plumbirds. Local legends claim plumbirds could peck at the boulder to trigger geyser eruptions, drawing forth the special type of butterfly just for them to feast on. After the Great Wave, the explosion of flora and fauna drew plumbirds across the peninsula in huge numbers, with fossils showing they especially favored Fletcher's Point and the waters near Crystal Valley. Some say their vivid coloring comes from eating the newly arrived jellyfish. Others insist plumbirds actually avoided the Electric Lagoon altogether, and avoided Sims who started taking jellyfish into their diet. Whatever the truth, one thing is clear. Plumbirds are now incredibly elusive and rarely spotted in the wild. It's obvious they take inspiration from the takahe of New Zealand, another blue bird with green accents and a bright orange beak. The only thing the takahe is missing is that signature plumb bob perched on its head. Recently, locals have begun telling stories of a giant plumbird wandering Gibbi Point, its rarity and mystery elevating it to the cryptid status. For anyone unfamiliar, cryptids are legendary creatures like Bigfoot or the Chupacabra, mysterious beings a lot of people believe are real. But this peculiar plumbird is actually real in The Sims 4. Her name is Pruella Preener, a massive walking talking plumbird who insists she is the real thing, even though she looks suspiciously like Big Bird. Locals can't agree on whether Pruella is good or bad. Some say she only wants friends, while others claim she bursts into campsites and steals their marshmallows. To add to the mystery, a rare insect called the cryptid moth only appears after Pruella sightings, further cementing her supernatural reputation. If you manage to befriend her and complete her quests, she'll teach you about the history of plumbirds, though she always avoids explaining exactly who or what she really is. And yes, because I know you're wondering, you can romance and even woohoo with Pruella. And the Sims team clearly expected players to try this. Unlike Trashly Real Pearson, Pruella is actually a pre-made Sim. She's cheerful, loyal, geeky, and dreams of collecting butterflies. She's romantically interested in men, but she'll woohoo with anyone. If you convince her to move in, she'll lose the costume and gain a unique trait called Previously a Peculiar Plumbird. Even stranger, if she has a child, that baby inherits a special trait of their own called Peculiar Plumbird baby. Just keep in mind Pruella is likely transgender, as she can get other people pregnant, not get pregnant. So that covers the history, myths, and mysteries of Gibbi Point itself. But a world is never just about its landscapes or legends. It's about the Sims who live there. The townies of Gibbi Point bring all of this lore to life, each one tied to the peninsula's past in their own unique way. And none of them are more prominent than the great adventurers of Gibbi Point. Toshie Akamine, Raheel Kunal, and Nigel Chavez-Ralston are known as the Great Adventurers, a title that honors their legacy of exploration and discovery as kids growing up in Gibbi Point. You can actually see this in the official reveal trailer, where Nigel is shown forming close bonds with Toshie and Raheel during their days at Camp Gibbi. According to Nigel, the title of Great Adventurer stretches all the way back to the earliest days of Gibbi Point. These three just happen to be the latest to carry it. Toshie has since grown into the storyteller of Gibbi Point. She guides curious Sims through the lore of the peninsula and reveals the adventurer's story map as they progress through her quests. She's a cheerful, outgoing bookworm who works as a freelance writer and dreams of becoming a best-selling author. She's skilled in charisma, fishing, painting, and writing, which fits her thoughtful and nerdy persona. Toshie identifies as Arrow Ace and still remains close with Nigel and Raheel, though she admits she doesn't talk to Raheel as much as she used to. She's also close friends with Raheel's sibling Laxmi, who we'll get to later, as well as Pruella the Plumbird. What makes Toshie stand out most is how considerate she is. She makes a point to share both the good and difficult parts of Gibbi Point's history, touching on themes like conservation and colonization, and does so with humility and kindness that shines through in every interaction. Raheel Kunal is now known as the Lost Adventurer. The Kunal family has a long history of explorers that traces back to his great-great-grandmother, Jaya Kunal, and Raheel has carried that legacy forward. After growing up, he devoted his life to traveling the unknown, only ever checking in with his sibling Laxmi from time to time. Raheel is a nature-loving athletic loner with dreams of becoming an angling ace. He's gay and skilled in fishing, fitness, handiness, mixology, papercraft, and even writing, a talent he likely picked up from spending so much time with Toshie. Though he remains close to her, Raheel and Nigel had a falling out after childhood. These days, Raheel can usually be found near the old Firewatch Tower, either working out, fishing at his favorite spot, or enjoying a campfire with his sibling. Raheel's sibling, Laxmi, is the resident butterfly conservationist of Gibbi Point. They grew up alongside the Great Adventurers, but always felt like an outsider. Laxmi is a romantic and loyal lover of the outdoors who dreams of becoming a master lepidopterist. That's a butterfly expert. They're skilled in fishing, gardening, papercraft, handiness, and curiously mixology, which feels a little out of place. Remember earlier when I mentioned the tradition of people leaving notes on the door of the Lonely Lighthouse? Laxmi is actually one of them. In their note, they share that they often felt alone growing up, and that the few times Raheel included them in his adventures, it was either out of pity or at their mom's request. At some point they fell in love, but the feelings weren't returned. The sim they cared for wanted someone more outgoing and cheerful. That experience, paired with their own reflections, shaped their deep connection to butterflies and their ability to transform through different stages of life. If you support Laxmi, they'll eventually realize that they really are social and outgoing after all. They lose the loyal trait and gain the outgoing one, and with it, a newfound sense of confidence. They also realize they don't truly want to be with the person they once liked, completing their journey of self-respect and growth. The final great adventurer, Nigel Chavez-Ralston, is the current camp director of Camp Gibbi. For all intents and purposes, he's the main character of this expansion, featuring heavily in the trailer and even on the cover art. Nigel is an athletic, outdoor-loving family man who aspires to raise the perfect family. He's still close with Toshie, but as I mentioned earlier, he no longer gets along with Raheel. Nigel admits he doesn't talk to him anymore because he dislikes Raheel's carefree personality, even calling it a bit, which suggests he doesn't think Raheel is genuine. Nigel has maxed archery and high charisma, with additional skills in diving, fishing, fitness, guitar, painting, and papercraft. All the abilities you'd expect from a camp counselor. Interestingly though, he dislikes both papercraft and painting, which means he only does it for the kids. Nigel is married to Sara Chavez-Ralston, and together they have 2 children, Aeris and Erin. They live comfortably at Wanderwood Wonder near Camp Gibbi, but Nigel's relationship with Sara is strained. Sara also works as a camp counselor, but the two often clash, something even the locals have noticed. She's a nature-loving, family-oriented neat freak who dreams of becoming a master lepidopterist. Apparently everyone does. They first met Nigel when they were both kids at Camp Gibbi. The household bio describes her as chaotic, supposedly the root of their dysfunction, but nothing in her traits or preferences really reflects that. Sara has strong skills in charisma, logic, and papercraft, along with training in archery, gardening, handiness, and painting. She's also developed a reputation for clashing with the locals. She had a public fallout with star Addams and openly dislikes her wife Jane, who we'll get to in a bit. Despite the tension, Nigel and Sara are both deeply committed to their children, to the point of agreeing not to argue about their differences in front of them. Whether they manage to keep that promise is another story. Their daughters, Aeris and Erin, couldn't be more different. Aeris has inherited many aspects of her parents, from her favorite color being pink like her mother's, to her dislike of mischief like her father's. She dreams of becoming a creative prodigy and is building her creativity skills accordingly. She's close with her sister and also friends with the other kids of Gibbi Point, including Dougie Perry and Buddy Scoop. Erin, on the other hand, is fiercely competitive and aspires to be the cool kid on the block. She has a contrarian streak, rejecting her mother's love of pink and enjoying pop music, which her mother can't stand. She's focused on building her social skills, and while she's friends with most of the local kids, she apparently doesn't get along with Buddy Scoop. There's also an imaginary friend in the Chavez-Ralston household who doesn't actually belong to anyone. It might be Nigel's old imaginary friend from the reveal trailer. That being said, the one in the trailer did eventually become a real boy, so it's unlikely that this is the original. Before we continue, I think it's worth taking a moment to talk about imaginary friends. Imaginary friends were first introduced in The Sims 3 with the Generations expansion pack, and honestly, they were pure nightmare fuel. You'd get the doll from some distant relative, and if you left it out of your inventory, it would just teleport around the lot and strike different poses because the Sims team hated us back then, I guess. If a child bonded enough with it, the toy would transform into a strange eldritch-looking creature that only the child could see. From there, it would grow right alongside them, all the way up to the young adult life stage. Eventually, Sims even had the option to turn their imaginary friend into a slightly off-looking but playable Sim by using the Imaginary Friend Metamorphium potion. If it wasn't already obvious, the imaginary friends caused a huge uproar in the community, scarring an entire generation of Simmers who grew up with them. So when Adventure Awaits announced the return of imaginary friends, it's no surprise that everyone collectively lost their minds. Adventure Awaits introduces 4 Imagine Me dolls, each with their own unique personality. The Little Monster is a goofball, Crafty Kid is creative, Wild Child is competitive, and Pretty Pegacorn is evil. The fun part is that you can actually alter their personalities, so you're free to pick whichever doll you like the most and shape it however you want. To awaken an imaginary friend, a child either needs a creativity skill of 3, has to experience extreme loneliness, or simply befriend the doll. Even before awakening it, playing with the doll will build a relationship, which means non-creative kids can eventually bring theirs to life. Each Sim can only have one active imaginary friend at a time though, so choose wisely. You can start over with a new doll, but that requires saying goodbye to your old friend forever, and honestly, that makes you a terrible person. Once awakened, the child can play with their friend and perform a bunch of unique activities. Just like in The Sims 3, only the owner can see it. Luckily, all of the nightmare fuel has been toned down here, for the most part. Your imaginary friend's personality will actually influence how your child grows. It creates formative moments that grant permanent traits and boost interactions based on the friend's personality. So maybe think twice before picking the evil one, unless you really want to raise a menace. If your child builds a bad relationship with their imaginary friend, it'll just up and leave forever. Once your Sim ages up to a teen, they'll no longer be able to see their imaginary friend, but they'll have the option to make them real. At that point, the friend joins your household as a fully playable Sim with a default appearance and traits. And yes, you can woohoo and even marry your imaginary friend. Unfortunately, I didn't notice any unique traits or benefits from marrying or having kids with one. Alright, back to townies. Over in Jellyfish Junction, you'll meet Freeda Perry and her grandson, Dougie, living in their Seabreeze scenic home. Freeda is a self-assured perfectionist with a snobbish streak who aspires to become a bodybuilder and devote her life to fitness. Despite her age, she serves as the seasoned retreat leader at the nearby Revive and Thrive retreat. It's ironic then that her grandson Dougie is the complete opposite. He's a creative loner who would rather spend his time playing video games. Freeda has high skills in cooking, charisma, and piano, which matches her love of classical music. She's also trained in papercraft, mixology, fitness, and archery. Hoping to nudge him towards a more adventurous lifestyle, Freeda gave Dougie a Wild Child Imagine Me toy to spark his active side. But Dougie is more focused on the mental skill and has inherited her love of classical music instead. It's never explained how or why Dougie came to live with his grandmother or what happened to his parents, but the two get along just fine. He's friends with the other kids at Gibbi Point, but his closest bond is with Buddy Scoop. Over in Crystal Valley, you'll find Buddy running a small stand near the abandoned gold mining facility. Buddy is the descendant of the Scoop Mining Company, which shut down long after the eruption of Hothead Rock Geyser. He's a rambunctious and competitive scamp who makes a living trading and selling all kinds of collectibles. His competitive streak runs so deep that he'll even wager some of his valuables in a game of rock, paper, scissors. Buddy also introduces Sims to crystal panning, which allows you to gather some random junk or crystals if you're lucky. As I said before, Buddy is friends with most of the kids in Gibbi Point except for Erin. Their rivalry may come from the fact that both of them are equally competitive, but there isn't more evidence than that. Finally, tucked away nearby is the Addam Commune Getaway, which is managed and maintained by Jane and Star Addam. Jane and Star are a lesbian couple who, despite being deeply disliked throughout Gibbi Point, clearly adore each other. They first met at the nearby Fearful Fish Lounge, where the two were instantly smitten. Jane is loyal, ambitious, and jealous, with aspirations of becoming the world's best mixologist. She enjoys cooking and classical music and has skills in archery, charisma, cooking, fitness, gourmet cooking, handiness, and of course mixology. She also has a strong dislike for Sara Chavez-Ralston, which may have something to do with Star's very public spat with her. Interestingly though, Star herself has no relationship level with Sara in game, which is strange. Star is erratic, outgoing, and ambitious, with the aspiration to become a friend of the world, which again is contrary to how she acts. She's skilled in charisma, fishing, logic, and piano, and adorably, each of their skills are curiously the preference of the other. If there's one thing Star and Jane agree on, it's their mutual lack of patience for their roommates, Agora Tchotchke and Skip Broke. Agora is a gloomy, lazy, and snobby sim who aspires to be a mischief maker. She's a lesbian with skills in charisma, cooking, and fishing, though she doesn't have much affection for her roommates and often says the wrong thing. Even her friends describe her as messy, but she doesn't let it bother her. Agora is actually a returning sim, first appearing in the Sims Life Stories, a Sims 2 spin-off that kicked off a well-received series of games. And true to form, she was just as messy there. In that story, she schemed to marry Mickey Smith out of revenge against Riley Harlow, only for her plan to fall apart when Riley exposed her kidnapping of her own aunt. It ended with a fight, her arrest, and her ultimate downfall. However, it would seem she was released and made her way to Gibbi Point to start a new life. And finally, we arrive at the last new sim and adventure awaits. Skip Broke. Now, before I get into it, and believe me, I'm gonna get into it, the moment I learned what I'm about to show you, I almost made this entire video about Skip Broke. Because not only does this completely change everything we thought we knew about him, but I think The Sims 4 just confirmed once and for all that it's all one universe, just like I've always been saying. So let's start at the beginning. The Broke family was first introduced in The Sims 2. Brandy was left raising her teenage son Dustin, her baby Beau, and her unborn child after what we all assumed was Skip's death, thanks to the missing pool ladder right before the game began. For decades, Simmers speculated Brandy herself may have been involved in her husband's death. In The Sims 3, we met a young Skip Broke and his family, giving us a glimpse into his upbringing. Dustin Broke later returned as a young adult celebrity in The Sims 4 Get Famous. And for the longest time, that was the accepted canon. But now, The Sims 4 has finally blown that wide open. Skip Broke is back as an active snobby slob who aspires to be fabulously wealthy. He's an adult and looks visibly older than his Sims 2 version, implying some time has passed since that game. He's skilled in charisma, fitness, gourmet cooking, handiness, logic, and violin. Star Addam even remarks that Skip has some dramatic story to tell but never actually does. And at first, it feels like a simple Easter egg until you visit the lighthouse. Like Laxmi, Skip leaves notes on the lighthouse door. In them, he admits he's frustrated that no matter where he goes, nothing ever works out. He recognizes that he's the problem, but he doesn't know how to fix it. He confesses to running away from situations that weren't working, something he picked up from his father, Flatbroke, who was notoriously cowardly and a mooch. If you keep following his story, he makes a heartbreaking comment. Sometimes life just pulls the ladder out of the pool. It's funny as a callback, but it also shows the pattern he can't escape, making messes he can't clean up. Eventually, if you guide him correctly, Skip realizes the people he abandoned deserve accountability. he decides to reach out, admit his mistakes, and make amends. This causes him to lose the slob trait and gain the loyal trait. This means Skip didn't die, he faked his own death, and now he plans to reconnect with Brandy and his family. Which is all well and good, but it raises the question, why did he disappear in the first place? The answer is actually in the game. The Sims 4 reveals that Skip Broke is gay. Now, throughout this video, I've been mentioning Sims sexualities. It's partly to help people know who they can pursue in-game, but also to point out that while most Sims default to being pansexual, the game does give them specific orientations. And for Skip, this detail changes everything. When you talk to him, Skip admits he admires Toshie for chasing exactly what she wants in life, while when he tries to do the same, people call him a jerk. And that, I think, is the real tragedy of Skip Broke. He abandoned Brandy and his family because he was struggling with his identity and didn't see a way out. He loved them, but he felt trapped in a life he couldn't live and be true to himself. That's why he felt so misunderstood, so alone, and it's devastating. Never in a million years did I think Skip Broke's story would take this turn. And now, more than ever, I hope the Sims team brings back Brandy and the kids so we can finally see how she reacts, because this is a story that needs closure. This also means that Gibbi Point takes place years after the events of The Sims 2. In the trailer, you can actually spot Alexander Goth alongside the Great Adventurers. That small detail suggests the timeline has moved forward about 10 years in Sims time. It explains why the adventurers are now adults and why Skip Broke appears as an older adult instead of the young man we last saw back in The Sims 2. I had the chance to sit in on a private livestream with some of the developers and producers of this expansion, and when they revealed Skip Broke, there was no talk of him being a different Skip Broke or some kind of reimagining. It was simply, hey, look who's back, and look who's got some explaining to do. Just like I said in my previous complete history video, the direction of the game has clearly shifted since 2020, and it's now undeniable. The Sims 4 takes place in a single, connected universe. And with that, you know everything you need to know about the lore of the Sims 4 Adventure Awaits expansion pack. Since Life and Death, the storytelling in The Sims 4 has gotten better and better, and if Adventure Awaits is the kind of storytelling we can expect going forward, then the future of The Sims lore has never looked brighter. And once again, y'all, making long-form videos plus daily shorts and working a full-time job is a lot, and helping me by subscribing to mynameisgonz.com really helps me out. These videos wouldn't be possible without the viewers on screen, and their contributions mean the world to me, so thank you so much. Oh, and if you want to hang out with me, play The Sims, and maybe get a little unhinged in the process, join me Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/mynameisgonz. Link in the doobly-doo. Alright, until next time, stay curious, stay cozy, and I'll see you in the next one.